Big time Cleveland Browns news coming out of Cleveland. Browns have been negotiating with the city to get a new stadium. However, we found out that this thing might be a little longer a process and a bigger process than we once let on. Coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Appreciate all the new listeners. Appreciate all the traffic to the Locked On Browns YouTube page. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you have your notifications on so when the content drops, you are there to consume it. And to all the day oneers, could not be more grateful for every single one of you. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. Everybody knows the big fella over there at GBush91, part of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, 92.3 The Fan, barbershop host Saturday mornings. Make sure you're checking that out. Today's episode of Locked On Browns is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to the franchise when using the promo Locked On, all caps, in the game. As we said, now normally this week and going into next week, look, it should be 110% NFL draft mode. We've been waiting for this. A lot of questions, a lot of talk about it. We're going to get it going here. G. Bush, let everybody know what is on the docket today, sir.
Well, look, bottom line is the Cleveland Browns are going to be vacating the premises for at least 2 to 3 years to figure out what the heck they're going to do with this stadium, whether it's a rebuild, a total rebuild, or they're going to get a new stadium. They're going to be out of there. We'll let you know how that affects the fans, because what are you guys going to do and where you guys going to be driving to watch the Cleveland Browns play? But it's going to be a much bigger build than we thought it was going to be. Where are they going to be at? We'll let you know what cities are up for it. But first, let's talk about it, Jeff. The news has come out. And first, overall, there will be, starting as early as 2026 for 2 to 3 football seasons, depending on funding from the public and private sources, the Haslam seek to rebuild Cleveland Browns Stadium so thoroughly that a source said it won't look anything like it does now. The city-owned stadium will reportedly be rebuilt on their existing lease with the city rather than wait until after the 30-year lease expires in the football season of 2028. The reason for rebuilding this stadium sooner, coinciding with the converting Shoreway to a boulevard, is to avoid higher construction costs later on and start the next lease with the newly rebuilt stadium. This means the Browns will pay 2 to 3 seasons at another location. So that's the big news and part of it. And we'll talk about it because, 2026. That's right in the middle of when Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns window. I mean, we've seen it here, $230 million. That is going to be right in the middle of what the Cleveland Browns would think is their most competitive years. And for that to be coming, we'll talk about it more actually in the third segment. But Jeff, there's a lot of things to consider with this. And the first and foremost is the city and the Browns were at an impasse. The Haslams have wanted for a long period of time to get a retractable roof and to have something on that venue in order to get a state-of-the-art type deal and to kind of control the climate. The city, and we've had Mayor Bibb on multiple times on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, it seems as if he's trying to drum up maybe a little interest for it. But right now in the city of Cleveland, when it comes to taxpayer dollars and the taxes in terms of building a new stadium from ground up, they just don't, to me, I don't think they have the votes at this point. City council has, it needs to be involved with that. And it just is, it's ironic here because it just seems that the Cleveland Browns, we're happy with Art Modell, and you can't blame Art Modell. He had one of the worst stadiums of all time. And then now the Haslams, say what you want about him, they've been a little bit they've made their reservations. They renovated it once, but we can all say this though, Jeff. They hastily built First Energy Stadium because the Browns were rushed back to begin with. It was never state-of-the-art. And first of all, it's not First Energy Stadium anymore. It's called, I believe, Cleveland Browns Stadium right now to do some owning rights. But that stadium has never been state-of-the-art. That stadium has never been in the top 10 as far as stadiums. And every single stadium that is now being newly built is going to have an advantage in the concourse, advantage when it comes to how you get in and out of the stadium, logistics, whether it comes to and by the way, it doesn't even really give you a nice environment like we talked about as far as being loud in a home field advantage. So there's a couple of things that people have always talked about, and as well as the seating and the internet. Nowadays, people want to come in and have their tablets. They want to have internet. They want to have all those things inside of the stadium. And the Brown Stadium is lacking in that. I think that Haslam's maybe putting this story out in order to drum up some interest from city council to say, do you really want your team out of the city for 2 to 3 years when this thing is going down? Let's see if we can work out something.
Well, first things first here. And this is where I think the issue is, on the city's behalf. And look, it's really, really difficult to, start, looking at, people who work and are just trying to do everything they can to provide for their families, keep the roof over their head. But the Haslams, with their monetary investments into the Columbus Crew, and we'll get to that, with their monetary investments into the Milwaukee Bucks, they're saying, look, we're willing to play ball here. You know what I'm saying? And this should be something where it's going to work on both ends. And a better stadium leads to, it should lead to more revenue. It should lead to, other things other than just 8 to 9 Cleveland Browns football games per year. So I think from the Haslam standpoint, they're saying, look, we're doing everything we can to be fair here, is the city itself. And that's a tough, I totally get it from the city standpoint.
For the city standpoint, definitely. Because you got a lot of guys leaving this. Cleveland's population is not what it used to be. We got people leaving consistently all the time. And if you're talking about the tax dollars, there's a lot of things that can go toward. There's a lot of public schools that are looking around in Cleveland that can use the help.
And well, I mean, the other thing, look, there's schools all over the world. I can't speak for schools in Ohio. My children walk into high school, they're handed a laptop. They hand it back in the day they graduate. I guarantee you that is not the type of learning that's going on in every area of Ohio. And that should be a bigger concern about where or not football games are being played. That being said, there is a lot more to it. And a lot of this stuff turns into, conversations which involve a ton of politics, which again, this is a Locked On Browns podcast. This is not Locked On Cleveland Politics podcast. So that becomes, different. And, just one of my favorite jokes here as they are going back to the name Cleveland Browns Stadium. A friend of mine lives out there and says it was great that it was called First Energy. A squirrel farts on a power line and I don't have power for 4 days. So, maybe First Energy, rightfully so lost that. But, it seems like we are really, really trending this way. But it does lead to some questions, no doubt, here about, what's going to go on here. The Browns, if this is all going to start in 2026, you figure the Browns 23, 24, 25, these should be some really, really prime seasons. And you could sell every single ticket in that joint if this goes the way it's supposed to. But then what do you tell everybody in 2026? So we're going to get to that here, because if this does come to fruition, where in the world is this team going to be for that 2 to 3 year window? Jeff Lloyd, Garrett Bush, breaking it all down here for you guys on your latest Locked On Browns. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You've heard us talk about this mobile game app. And if you ever thought you'd make a good GM, you got to give this game a try. It's not as easy as you might think to create a dynasty. When you play Ultimate Football GM, you get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory, trying to build an historic dynasty. For me, it gets tricky. You got players that retire out of nowhere. You got key injuries, draft picks that don't work out, coaches that you hired that flamed out. It becomes really, really difficult, but it also becomes very, very addicting. With Ultimate Football GM, you are responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise. You control the draft. You control free agency. You control off-field issues that your players get into, and you got to make the right decision, all to please your owner. All of this and more in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. Locked On Browns listeners get a 100% free boost for their franchise when using the promo Locked On, all caps, in the game store. That is Locked On, all caps. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today.
Thank you for listening to the Locked On Browns podcast, your team every day. And thank you for making us your first listen of each and every day. When we look at this, we talked about what we got going on in terms of what got to the decision and what brought us to the decision to make sure that the Cleveland Browns, how they got there to making sure that they got a new stadium and what are the processes included in that. But let's get to the second part of that, Jeff, and that's if you're going to have a stadium, if you're going to be displaced for a couple of years, then what it is, where are we going? Where are we going? And when I look at this a little bit, I look at it as this, how this affects the logistics of going to a Browns game, the logistics of how, because at the end of the day, the Browns have not done this before. There's a lot of teams who've done this, the Raiders, the Chargers. There's lots of teams that have.
When the Tennessee Titans first went to Tennessee.
Yep. You're basically going to be downsizing a little bit, and I don't know if it's avoidable. When I was listening to radio, Cleveland radio on the way in, people are like, "Hey, I don't want to go to Canton because it's too small. We're going to be these 30-some thousand people. That leaves 30 or 40,000 season ticket owners that can't go to the games, right?" Then they're like, well, it's in Columbus. Well, I don't want to drive 2 hours to the game in Columbus. And how does that look when it's in the winter? How does that move? How does that affect players? It's just the logistics of that. So this is the second part in the article. It was publicly known. It is not publicly known yet where the Browns will play, but Columbus has likely locations. The Haslams already have a presence there in the Columbus Crew Soccer League on the venue. The 2-year-old soccer specific lower.com fields seats about 20,371.
That ain't gonna work.
Look, you're looking. I mean, you gonna tell 50,000 season ticket holders that they can't watch a game?
Bent.
They're gonna go crazy. When the Browns played their first Orange and Brown scrimmage on August 7, 2015, they played to 49,734 fans at Ohio State's University's 102,000 plus Ohio Stadium, aka the Horseshoe. It was the highest attendance for any Browns open practice or family day since 2005. The Browns would like to regain their fan dominance in Ohio's capital city, taking attention away from their AFC North rivals, Cincinnati Bengals and Pittsburgh Steelers. Sources described the renovated Browns Stadium as stripping the venue down to possibly including some of its original load-bearing structure. It will be a top-down rebuild, one source says. That's why it's more of a rebuild than a renovation. It includes constructing new, wider concourses around the stadium perimeter and that are climate controlled and offer views of the field. That alone will require a major rebuild of the stadium, as the current concourses are lower than their entries into the seating bowl, and current structure cannot support them. So when you look at this, Jeff, and you look at take a look at their options are, hey, it's more economical for them because they own Columbus Crew Stadium, right? They could just say, all right, let's slap something on it. And we'll make it accessible. We already own it. We don't have to pay anybody to do rent. However, Columbus has always been in their thought process. Columbus has always been a city that they were enamored with because it does give them a bigger footprint in the state. I'm going to tell you right now, Columbus in down is Cincinnati Bengals country. Joe Burrow is a homegrown talent down there. Southeast, Southwest Ohio. He went to Athens. His father was a coach at Ohio University. Guys down there worship the dude. Columbus is pretty much a Cincinnati Bengals type city right now. The Browns may want to get down there and do that with the presence, but they're going to have to pay Ohio State some coins too. The Buckeyes are not going to take a back seat, and they're going to say, hey, you want to be down here on Sundays? You got the bag. How much you willing to spend? And then one long shot is in Canton, Ohio. Dustin Fox talked about it. They already play games down in Tom Benson Memorial Stadium. They're going to be down there in order to, enshrine Joe Thomas. They're going to be down there in order to play the Hall of Fame game. Trust and believe that the Haslams will be down there talking the NFL. They just finished the Hall of Fame Village. Trust and believe at that point in time, they will think about it and how much it will cost, and could they bring some more people down there. So those are three options. Your thoughts, Jeff, on the Columbus angle, and what do you think is the best specific place for those who play those games?
Well, first things first, if this team is going to go on a 3-year run for the next 3 years, like we think that they are trying to put themselves in a position to do, how do you go play it at 20? And even you slap 10,000. And look, it's a soccer stadium in Columbus. You're not going to build it 40,000 seats.
Yeah, you're not.
You're not going to build it. You're not going to put it. You're not going to double the capacity at the stadium for the Columbus Crew for 2 years to accommodate the Cleveland Browns. So that becomes an issue within itself, because if this goes like it's going to go, it's going to be the hottest commodity going in Ohio, and you're going to have even more season ticket holders. Can you say, hey, look, we'll punt one of those games if it's 2 years, take the Browns to London? That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good with that. Sure, that's fine. But how do you tell all, and we'll get to the fans here in segment 3, because, if it's rebuilding Cleveland Browns Stadium, yeah, you're excited about it, but like, where am I at? But that's still to come. But, the only logical thing, in my opinion, there's 2 logical things you do. You work something out with the Detroit Lions. And if you're going to build a structure where it is more enclosed in, and the pictures, the renderings that we're seeing, it looks a little bit kind of like SoFi out in LA. The way the building is, it looks like, you have roof structure from maybe the 30 to the 30, and then maybe the red zones are uncovered. That's the structure we're seeing of this facility. But if this team is really, really good for the next few years, you can't downsize by more than 50%. You cannot. So you either look to the Detroit Lions and say, is there a way we can make this work? Which you can. And again, as far as the Tennessee Titans, we mentioned earlier, this is different. The Tennessee Titans went to Nashville, and they weren't an expansion team, but it was a new product. The Browns are an established product. Good or not, as far as success on the field, they are an established product. The only other logical solution, you're not going to go play in Cincinnati. Hell no, never in a million stinking years. The only other logical thing is to make something work with Ohio State. And keep in mind, go ahead.
And with the Ohio State move, that's 107,000 stadium. That's 107, right?
I would rather see some seats empty than to have a whole bunch of people not being able to get in. And keep in mind, when is Ohio's last? We all know that Ohio State's last game is the Saturday either before Thanksgiving or the Saturday before Thanksgiving. There are no games at the shoe after that. Then you go into Big Ten play. So all of them remaining 6-7 weeks of the regular season, it would be a Brown stadium.
They have an indoor facility. You probably could.
Well, you don't have to do that. Everything can still go on in Berea. But essentially, every week is going to be like a road game, even if it's a home game.
And does that affect the players a little bit? I'll ask you that.
Yes and no. But at the end of the day, look, you're making your money. I mean, look, if we got, you know what I'm saying? It's tough. And even if you don't like it, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? And, that's a tough pill to swallow. And at the end of the day, and this is where the ownership is terrible, because ownership is like, look, you all get your money. We got to do about, the future and you got to look beyond and all that type of stuff. And I get it. I do. But you could easily go down, you can go down Saturday. You can go down Friday night.
You could.
Nobody's got to leave their houses. Nobody's got to move. That's the thing where I think people are getting thrown off here. Yeah, it's going to be a 2.5 hour bus drive on a Friday night. Yeah, you know what I'm saying, and those type of things. But we can't get stuck here on this segment the entire time.
Yeah.
Now, here is the bottom line of all this, and it's a juxtaposition. We're going to get to it here. What about the fans? What about the fans? And that's going to be the part we're going to get to here in segment 3. Jeff Lloyd, G. Bush, rolling through your latest Locked On Browns here every day. Appreciate everyone who makes us your first listen. And the day oneers, you are the driving force behind this podcast. I will never, ever not say that enough. And we appreciate you all. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. And we are always available on your favorite podcast platform and always for free.
I'll tell you what, Jeff. The first and foremost, the thing we got to talk about, and I think this is the most important. How does this affect the fans, right? So, we've talked about everything that's going on. The timeline for moving parts are complex, but are starting to come in focus. Still many unknowns at this stage, but between now and when the venue formerly known as First Energy Stadium.
That was well written. Smart move on their part.
Love it.
Of course, they're plugging the article about where the name changed too. That's even really, you see the underline, you see that. That's good stuff.
Right here.
Like it.
It is rebuilt. Many of the teams and Haslam Group's office staff will be temporarily relocated from their Berea headquarters to makeshift offices at the stadium and to remote working. During the renovation of cross-country mortgage campus, the Browns off-season training programs may have to be relocated for up to 1 year. Expansion of the campus will take longer, more than 1 year, and may be carried out in phases depending on financing and city approvals. The expanded campus will reportedly include a new hotel, restaurant, shops, conference facilities. The Haslams in the cities have already acquired more than 30 acres of land and demolished many homes and churches for the massive expansion of the Browns Berea facility. So here's the thing that we're looking at with this. Not only
you can't do it both at the same time. You can't do both of these at the same time. They can't live like vagabonds, dude.
By the way, Jeff, like the crazy part about this is, as this coincides in different parts, essentially what you're saying is the Cleveland Browns don't play in Cleveland. Their offices won't be in Berea. They'll be moved.
But you can't do these two things at the same time. These guys they're not. And now you're telling people to move from their homes, and you got some of these guys with $5-6 million home. You cannot do both of this at the same time. This is before and we're supposed to be about the fans here, but it's either one or the other right now. You want to rebuild Berea, I'm fine with that. But which one is it? Is the stadium more important, or is the building in Berea and getting a better building for the players more important? And we're supposed to be talking about the fans here. And that's where it gets tough, because you got fans in limbo. So wait, we can't go to training camp?
No.
If you go to a smaller venue, we can't show up for free practices.
No.
Like all of this.
No. This is the biggest part. This is the biggest part right here, because it'd be okay if you told people, hey, look, you're cutting half the season ticket owners. You're not allowed to go to the games. Or what are you going to do? How are you going to pick it? Are you going to do the lottery or a raffle? Because you got 20-some,000 people.
You get week 1, you get week 11, and you get week 15.
And then you got to look at it this way. Now you're telling the fans, well, look, you might not even, now mind you, I'm at those practices. We're there. And those practices are packed.
There is not an empty seat. Not an empty seat in those practices.
And you got to get a lottery to get that. You have to have a lottery just to get so to me, Jeff, this was the thing that I looked at the most, that was the most head scratching, because essentially the Cleveland Browns will be moving, and their whole network, their facility, their practice, the training, all the games, it will be done in different locations. It's crazy. You might not see the Browns for 2 years. Home games, none of it, unless you travel.
The thing that comes to my head right now, and with all of this going on, is right now it's one or the other becomes priority. Otherwise, there's the Willie Nelson song, On the Road Again. Like a band of gypsies, we go down the highway. If you don't have a home where you practice and you train at, that's okay. we can maybe work at the stadium. Oh, wait, we can't work at the stadium because we're rebuilding that. So, I mean, you got guys basically telling them, hey, grab a suitcase and you're in a hotel the entire season. No. So this has to, and first things first, it is always about the stadium, first and foremost. Look, J.C. Treader, they did that poll, and it was smart on J.C. Treader's part to say, hey, look, players need better. And that's fine. But the Browns right now, what's the position? The stadium is always more important than your facilities. You can make the weight room better. You can get better food in. You can make better access for players' wives and their families. That is a lot easier to do, and that can be done in an off season. To rebuild a stadium, if you're going to take it down to the cement structure, that takes years. Yes. Yeah. So it's a lot easier to bust guys out for 36, 48 hours than it is to say, oh, well, you train here, but we play here. That is, you have to get this structured better. And I think this is the point of what the Haslams are trying to do. We'll put our thoughts on the building on the back burner if we can give a better product to our fan base for the 8-9 home games per season that the Browns will play. And this is where I feel bad for the fans, because you may get nothing out of this. And the way this is, and, look, it'll eventually get leveled out because there's no way you can do all of this at once. You just cannot. I mean, it's like telling, your kids, we're going to dump the house, we're going to rebuild it, it's going to be big and beautiful, but you can't see your friends, for 13 months, and you're going to have to go to a different school. So this is, Jimmy Haslam, and look, he ain't a fool here. And the part that I love about this from the Haslams is they want improvement. They want everything upgraded. They want everything 100% top of the line, keeping up with the Joneses of the NFL, which that's fine. That should be your ultimate goal, that you are giving your players and hopefully your fans the best possible thing you can. But it's got to be structured better. The stadium will always take precedence over the building in Berea. You can every year, every a little bit more. The stadium, and if this has got to be, got to go on the road for 2 to 3 years, that's fine. But the building of Berea, that's got to wait.
Yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do. Are they gonna try to do this thing? I'm a history major, and the history does not look kindly on people who tried to fight a war in two fronts. It don't really work that way, right? Like it's a lot of generals.
You end up like Benedict Arnold is what you end up.
Yeah, you end up looking around, man. So to me, this is going to be very interesting because
there's a lot, but a lot of this is all positive. It truly is.
It is.
But the question is, how is it going to come to fruition to solve everybody at the same time?
Right. It's one of those things where you want nice facilities, you want state-of-the-art facilities, you want improvement on that. However, I'll just say this, like, you can't have everything, right? You can't have everything. So if I want a new stadium and I want a new practice facility, at some point you're going to have logistics, and you're going to have to move at a certain pace to do it, because you don't want to alienate your fans. I mean, as cool as it would be for guys that are down in the Columbus area that are Browns fans, that to get the Browns to be playing down there is one thing, but you got to also take in consideration, they went and got Deshaun Watson because they thought this team was close. If he's back to what he is and was, it's going to be painful for some people to say we missed the prime of our era, or the prime of what we wanted to do, and we couldn't even do it in a stadium that we called our own. So that's a tough pill to swallow. It doesn't hurt me that much, Jeff, because I'm not going to the game. Hey, look, I'm gonna watch the Browns. If they in London or O State or Canton, the product is too good on TV, and I can't be in the cold. But for some people, the young guys, the people that are diehards that have season tickets, I do feel for them a little bit.
Well, look, we can keep continuing blowing this up. It'll be, media suite. It'll be, hey, G. Bush, Jeff Lloyd, you got to come stand on the sidelines. Bring your nice big overcoats. We'll
Right?
get you dressed all nice, warm. Of course, we all pipe dream in here. G's going to start plugging here. Should have been mock draft Monday, obviously, but this is breaking news. Tomorrow, go ahead and check it out. We're going to have Dane Brugler, as everybody knows, big, big top NFL draft guy, dropped his Cleveland Browns final mock here. We're going to dissect that tomorrow, so we'll get into that. He is Garrett Bush, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Of course, on-air personality, 923 The Fan, the barbershop Saturday morning. It is a lot hopping right now at the barbershop, whether it's Browns talk, whether it is the Guardians, and of course, the Cavaliers. So make sure you guys are checking that out. Follow at GBush91. Myself, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. The show at Locked On Browns. For all the on YouTube, the subscribers, we appreciate you so much. Push it to your friends. Throw some likes on the episode. So if they're not seeing them, it'll start showing up in their feed as well. Make sure you got notifications on. It's going to be a hectic about next 10, 12 days here. I don't know if there's going to be a day off for not Locked On Browns over the next 10, 12 days. There's just so much to get covered here and get you guys, satisfied, as we get closer and closer to the draft. Yeah, the Browns don't hold a first-round pick or a second-round pick, but you all want to hear players' names. You all want ideas. You want our thoughts, and we're going to give them to you every single day. All that being said, this has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go Browns.